Hello dear students, I'm Dr. Madhuri Goswami. Welcome back. This lesson is the third in the series of the active and passive voice that we have been studying in General English. And this lesson has been prepared for the students of BA, BCom and BSc Part 1. In the previous lesson, we have already studied what are the rules which we should follow to change from the active to the passive voice. But dear students, you must remember that in your question paper, you might get question like this: change the voice of these sentences. In that case, first you need to identify the voice of the sentence and then you will change it. If it is in passive voice, then you will change it into the active voice. If it's an active voice, then you will change it into the passive voice. And now, in this lesson, we will take up two things. Number one, the table which I gave you in the part 2 that described that how to change the active to passive voice in all the tenses. And second, practice. Because without practice, you won't be able to learn this topic clearly and in a way that you can solve all those questions which are going to appear in the examination. Apart from that, this topic is quite useful in your English conversation, real life English conversation. So, let's get started. Dear students, there is a suggestion for you. Whenever you study any grammar topic, please do exercise. Practice and revision are very important part of your study. So please focus on this part also, whatever the subject you are studying. Now let's understand the table of tenses and learn how to change the active to the passive voice in all the tenses. Here we have taken up a verb play. And you will find all the forms of this verb play in the active voice as well as in the passive voice in all the tenses, whether it's present simple or past simple or the future simple. Well, let me explain it in detail. The simple present tense. In the active voice column, we have two verb forms, play or plays. As you all know, with the third person singular, we use s or es with the first form of the verb. With I, we, you, they and other plural subjects, we use just the first form of the verb in the present simple tense. Okay, when we change this present simple tense from active to passive voice, the verb form is changed in this way. The form of the verb be is used according to the subject and tense. So in the present tense, it's is, am, are. So we will use one of these. If the subject is third person singular, we will use is. If the subject is first person singular, then we will use am. And for the rest of the subjects, we use are because they are considered plural or they are plural, like you, we, they. And this verb be is followed by the past participle of the main verb. It's also known as the third form of the main verb. Here it's played in case of the verb that we have selected for this table is play. So its third form, its past participle is played. So we'll use is, am, are plus played in the present simple tense and in the affirmative sentences. In case it's a negative sentence, then we will use not. And where will use this word not? We will use it between the verb be and the main verb, the past participle of the main verb. So it will become like this: is, am, are plus not plus played. In the past simple tense, in the active voice, the second form of the main verb is used. Here in this case, it's played. When we change it into the passive voice, there will be the verb be. Its past forms are was and were. If the subject is singular, we use was. If the subject is plural, we use were. The third form of the main verb, that will be the past participle of the main verb, played. In the future simple tense, in the active voice, we have the structure will or shall play. And in the passive voice, when we will change it, there will be the use of the verb be and then the past participle of the main verb. So it will be will be played, shall be played. When we take up the present continuous tense, in the active voice, the verb form is, am, are plus play plus ing. That's changed into the passive voice and it becomes is, am, are plus being plus played. This ing is shifted to the verb be. The past participle of the main verb will be used whatever the tense it is. As we discussed in the previous lessons and we discussed in the beginning of this lesson also, the verb form in the passive voice is be plus the third form of the main verb. This is the be verb form that's changed according to the tenses. In the past continuous tense, in the active voice, was or were plus playing is the verb structure. And when it's changed into the passive voice, this was, were remains the same and plus being plus played. This ing is shifted to the verb be as it shows the continuous action. So ing form it's used, but in the case of the passive voice, it's shifted to the be, so it becomes being. Was, were plus being plus played. Let's move further and just see what about the future continuous tense. In the active voice, will or shall be playing is the verb form of the future continuous tense. But in the passive voice, there is no passive voice in this tense. It's not applicable. We can say there is no passive verb formation for this tense. That's the future continuous tense. In case of the present perfect tense, in the active voice, we have the verb form has or have plus played. With the singular, we use has. With the plural, we use have plus played. Now, when this tense is transformed into the passive voice, it will be has oblique have been played. Here, the form of the verb be, been is used. The same is the case with the past perfect tense. In the active voice, we have the verb form had played, and in the passive voice, it becomes had been played. Again, the verb form of the be, been is used here. In the case of the future perfect tense, in the active voice, we have the verb form like this, will or shall have played. And when we change it into the passive voice, it will become will or shall have been played. I hope now it's crystal clear that the verb form, verb structure in the passive voice is the verb be plus the past participle or the third form of the main verb. This is the verb be that is differently used according to the tense and according to the subject in all the sentences. In case of the present perfect continuous or the past perfect continuous and the future perfect continuous, there is no passive verb form. So we cannot change these tenses from the active to the passive voice. For the modal verbs, we can say in the active we use the modal verb plus first form of the main verb. That's like can play, may play, or should play. When we change it into the passive voice, it will become can be played. Notice the use of the verb be here also. So after the modal verb, we use be plus past participle of the main verb. That is the third form of the main verb. Dear students, you can pause the video here if you want more time to look at the table. Just look at the table, just note it down and use it accordingly. I'll give you some sentences for practice now, and this table may prove a great resource for you whenever you get stuck. Whenever you want to know what's the verb form in a particular tense, you can take help of this table. And your teacher is also there. You can ask me in the comment section if you have any doubt, any kind of query. Now it's practice time. As promised, now we will practice. There are 3 exercises which I will give to you. 2 of them we will do in this lesson and 1 is for your home assignment. Here is the first exercise. I have tried to incorporate all kinds of sentences in this exercise so that if you have any doubt, that can be resolved here. The first sentence is, the thieves cut the wires of the powerhouse. So we need to identify 3 things. Number 1, who is the agent? Number 2, what's the action? And number 3 is the receiver. The thieves is the agent, it's the subject, it's the doer as they are performing the action of cutting. What's the action? Cut. The wires of the powerhouse is the object, the receiver of the action. So, the first rule is, when we change the sentences into passive voice, we need to identify the object of the active voice. And that's placed as the subject in the passive voice. So here, the wires of the powerhouse, this phrase works as the object. And this becomes the subject in the passive voice as you can see in the answer. And the subject of the active voice will take place at the end of the sentence as the object, and that is the thieves. And the preposition by would be used before this. So, by the thieves. The rule number 3, the change in the form of the verb. In this sentence, there is the past simple tense. Don't get confused because the word cut, its second form of the verb is the same, cut. So, in the past simple, the passive verb form is was or were plus third form of the main verb. Here the wires of the powerhouse are plural, so we will use were. So the wires of the powerhouse were cut, as the third form of the cut is the same, cut. So the passive voice will go like this: the wires of the powerhouse were cut by the thieves. Don't make a mistake not to change the verb form, otherwise there will be the distortion of meaning. The second sentence is, his mother gave him a toy. Just identify SVO. Well, in this sentence, we have 2 objects, indirect object and direct object. His mother is the subject, gave is the verb, him, indirect object, a toy, direct object. We can change the sentence into passive voice by taking any of the objects. We can take him and we can take a toy also. But the indirect object is taken preferably. So we will take this word him in place of the subject of the passive voice as it's the object in the active voice. Him becomes he. His mother is the subject in the active voice and that will take place of the object in the passive voice. Of course, with the preposition by. Now the verb form. The tense of this sentence is past simple, gave. This is the second form of the verb. It will be changed into the passive voice, be plus third form of the main verb. Main verb is give and the third form of the main verb is given. But before that, what will be the form of verb be? As he is the third person singular, so we will use was. As it's a past tense, so we'll use was. He was a toy by his mother. And what if we take the direct object as the subject of the passive voice? A toy is the direct object, and if we take this word as the subject of the passive voice, then it will be read like this. A toy was given to him by his mother. Then before the indirect object, we need to use preposition. Here in this case, the preposition to. Dear students, I hope you have understood well the active and passive voice, how to change the active and passive voice in all the tenses. Stay tuned. Happy learning. Thank you for joining.